With your end-of-day report in chilly Mobile, Alabama, outside the Senior Bowl at Hancock Whitney Stadium, I am John Schmeelk. It is day one of Senior Bowl practice down here in Mobile. And remember, folks, this is a very unique senior class. You had an extra year of eligibility because of the pandemic for a lot of these upperclassmen. So you have some 5 and even 6-year seniors, a much deeper class that Giants General Manager Joe Schoen and the rest of his staff can choose through as they get closer to draft time. In practice today, the players were in uppers, which means shoulder pads, helmets, but they were in shorts, so not full pads. But there was still a lot of physical play out there. The national team took the field first in practice today, and a couple of offensive linemen really played well. Jermaine Johnson, the guard from Boston College, very physical, low center of gravity, excellent job blocking inside the trenches. And then Trevor Penning, he was at left tackle from Northern Iowa for most of the day. Probably one of the more effective tackles in both practices, did a really nice job. Former teammate of Ellerson Smith, who's on the Giants roster, obviously. Small school guy trying to prove himself here against some of those Power 5 conference players. One guy that did give that offensive line fits, though, was Haskell Garrett, defensive tackle out of Ohio State. Showed a lot of power inside, pushed offensive linemen back. Then a couple of playmakers jumped out. Jeremy Ruckert, tight end out of Ohio State, made a nice catch, peeling the ball off the ground on a low throw. And then Christian Watson, North Dakota State wide receiver, had a nice day as well. In the second practice, the American team, the defensive line really showed out. They have some really big impact players on that defensive front. John Ridgway, a defensive tackle out of Arkansas, is one of those guys. 320 pounds. He had a sack, a couple tackles for loss, dominating in the middle. Next to him, Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia, the defensive tackle. He had a really nice day showing his physicality. And then on the edge, Jermaine Johnson, an edge rusher out of Florida State. He was in the backfield the entire day. Really good pursuit off the edge on a running play to the outside, a tackle for loss. He's going to be a really, really effective impact player on the edge in the NFL. Didn't take a whole lot of time looking at the quarterbacks, but even watching the big guys, it was very easy to see Sam Howell from North Carolina had himself a pretty solid day out there. We'll take a look at the wide receivers, the DBs, and the quarterbacks tomorrow, as well as some of the skill position guys as we continue coverage in Mobile, Alabama of the Senior Bowl right here on Giants.com, the Giants mobile app, and of course all of our social media platforms. Make sure you stay tuned.